Hello, everyone. Welcome to the season number 3, episode number 17. This is Agile Wisdom Podcast. I'm Niroshan Madampitige, an Agile coach from the beautiful island, Sri Lanka. Today, I have a very special guest with me to talk about something that's gonna change your management game. In this episode, we are going to talk about OKRs, lean OKRs. Goal setting is one of the most replicated and influential paradigms in the management context. The trick is that if you do not pay the right attention on goal setting, it can backfire and become the most wasteful activity than being anything useful. So today, let us help you to clear all your doubts about goal setting, to get goal setting to the next level, helping your team and your organization to go from good to great. For that, let me invite my colleague, Bart, on the show. Hey, Bart.
Hey, Nero. Thanks for having me.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
It's my absolute pleasure and privilege to have you on the show, Bart. Thank you for welcoming the invite and spending your personal time with us.
Not a problem. Happy to be here and have a good talk with you.
Yeah. So I'm sure the talk is gonna really help everyone around us, particularly if you look at Sri Lanka. But it's this particular topic that we're going to talk about, particularly the term OKR, objectives and key results. It's not something that's adopted at all at the organizational level. So remember, you are the one who was instrumental about this, and I heard the term OKR from you in 3 years ago, right? From that point, actually, I invested heavily on it, and then I managed to develop a 3-stage certification track, right? Going through a lot of research materials, basing what I heard from you, and then researching myself. And on top of it, in my current company, Vetstoria, we use a management methodology which is inspired by OKR, that is called entrepreneurial operating system. It uses a pretty much a similar set of concepts around it, right? We call them rocks than OKRs, but it's pretty much the same thing, right? So the talk that we're going to have today will definitely inspire a lot of companies, a lot of teams and individuals as well. Yeah. I'm sure the first set of OKR practitioners who went through the OKR practitioner training are watching us and will be with us. Will be probably asking quite good questions. Yeah. So with that, Bart, let's start the show. Yeah, let's start the show. Now, where do I start? Let me start the talk with a quite interesting topic. That is your book, right? And I see a lot of interesting insights coming from you, particularly talking about the book that you are writing. Is it done or still in the final stages?
Well, it is done, and hopefully the book is going to print this week. So I'm really excited about that.
Oh, nice. Love to hear. Definitely, I'm gonna have a copy of it. Yeah. So once it's ready, so
Yeah, you
looking
sure?
forward to read it. Looking forward to read it. Yeah. The first question is around that, but the question is, so tell us something about your book. What is it?
Yeah. So the
What
book
is it
title.
about, basically?
Yeah. So the book title is "Moving the Needle with Lean OKRs," and I started writing the book 2 years ago, and it was a little bit out of frustration, I would say, but also a lot of questions that I got from leaders all around the world, clients saying like, okay, we know about OKRs, we've read the books, especially Measure What Matters. It's a great book. There are great examples in it, And of course, there's also Christine Watsky's Radical Focus, and a lot of people read these
Yeah.
books, and they miss kind of the hands-on guide, basically, to start using them in their organization. And next to that, I saw like a lot of organizations starting out with OKRs, and they didn't work for their organization. So I discovered some patterns, and I tried to harvest these patterns, and I put them in the book. And I call them explicitly lean OKRs, because I think in many organizations they try to tick a box with OKRs, basically converting all their existing goals into OKRs, and they tick a box and say like, now we're using OKRs. But that's not true. So with lean OKRs, I try to put the emphasis on reducing the amount of goals, and actually I like to use like a single OKR for the whole organization and for every team, to really focus on what is really important for the organization. So with the book, I try to make an attempt on getting OKRs back on track for many organizations that are now using them.
That's great perspective. So I love the fact that you're focusing on the lean thinking together with
Yep.
OKR, right? Now,
Yep.
based on what I went through, but there are a lot of problems around goal setting, right? Most of the organizations are suffering due to a lot of issues, right? Not sure you came across this particular research paper done by Harvard Business School in 1990. John Dewar, in his book Measure What Matters, he mentioned this, and he says this article was quite overwhelming for him, right? The article talks about something. It's basically titled as "Goals Gone Wild." it talks about quite a few malpractices that can lead to really frustrating situations, unproductive teams, demotivation, and all that problems, right? All those problems, right? And in that particular report, they put HBS, Harvard Business Schools, put a warning, right, saying this. So I would like to read this warning. It's quite interesting, and it's quite in line with what you just said, right? So the warning says goals may cause systematic problems in organizations due to narrowed focus, unethical behaviors, increased risk taking, decreased cooperation, and decreased intrinsic motivation. Use care when applying goals in your organization, right?
Yeah,
So
that's very
this
true.
was quite
Yeah.
interesting. Quite interesting for me when I saw it. And yeah, so I think you are trying to nail on that perspective, right? Because just OKR itself might not optimize anything if you are not trying to optimize the whole, right? So I think lean talks about optimizing the whole system than just making suboptimal efforts towards improvements.
Exactly, and that's the whole lean thinking concept is behind OKRs, and explicitly called lean thinking because a lot of lean concepts can be reflected back on OKRs, and lean is one of my favorite management techniques. And unfortunately, I see many organizations that they should pay, I think, more attention to this label that you just mentioned, like, be careful, caution when using OKRs,
Yeah.
because it's basically it is agile stereotypes, right? So if you have a lot of teams and they still struggle with, for example, basic Scrum, you have a problem. You need to fix that first, right? If you don't have excellent delivery skills, how do you think that you can move on to the next level, which is OKRs? OKRs is really like a progression of agile thinking, because it involves the whole organization. Yeah, and it starts with respect for people first. Yeah,
Absolutely. It's pretty much in line with agile thinking, and as you said, think OKR as the next step, right? So if you haven't fixed the basics, fundamental problems, I think you are not ready to think any scaling frameworks. Yeah. Right. So let's move on. Right. So there are quite a lot of questions that I would love to ask from you. So
Yeah,
my
please shoot.
intention for
Yeah.
the talk is about picking your brain, particularly on your thinking when you wrote your book. What were you thinking? What are you trying to solve? What specific suggestions you are putting into the OKR work? Because it's very trending internationally, right? But as I
Mm.
said, in Sri Lanka, it's not used at all. So I'm trying to kind of develop that community, being the first mover, right? So I did the first batch of first training on OKR practitioner level certification, right? So during the last 6 to 8 months, and I think this discussion, my focus on this discussion is to get your insights in terms of helping that effort, right? Letting the
Yep.
community know, okay, this is what it is, this is how you can get started as a beginner, as a fresher. Okay,
Yep.
so let's run through the next question. The first question I have for you is this. If you see the screen, right, let me read it for you. For those who don't know much about OKRs, let's define it in your terms. What are OKRs?
So OKRs are a goal setting system. For sure, that's obvious, right? And it is also, sometimes people call it a critical thinking framework, right? Because it requires that people think critically about their goals and their strategy, etc. But I think above all, it is a mechanism to provide organizational wide learning. So not on a local level, but on a global scale in a company, the whole company as a whole should learn continuously to making big steps towards very challenging goals. So in OKRs, in a nutshell, it's you have an objective. That's the thing that the thing that you would like to achieve. That's the what, and then you have the key results, and those are measurable outcomes towards this objective. And there's a third component, by the way, which a lot of people forget when they're using OKRs.
Mistake.
Yeah, and that third component is basically the OKR cycle. So without the OKR cycle, there are many forms and shapes of this OKR cycle, but without the OKR cycle in place, OKRs are useless, right? So you need to have all three components. So you need to have the objectives, the key results, and then you need to provide a regular rhythm
Cycle,
for OKRs.
cadences.
Yeah, you need to have the cadence in place. Without that, you need to have a system in place to achieve your goals. So that's really important. So I will always say, like, OKRs have three components. So objectives, key results, and a cycle.
That's a great definition. But thank you for that, and I love it. And yeah, so whenever I talk about OKRs, I talk about the cycle, but I don't bring that as part of the definition. But what you said is right. Yeah. So what you're saying is, if you just have OKRs, right, where you have the objectives talking about what to do, and then key results, these are the milestones or the outcomes that you're trying to achieve by going in the direction that you have set in the objective. But if you miss out, if you overlook on the cycle, that won't mean anything. It's simply, these things will be there somewhere written and no one looks at it, right? I think the OKR cycle is what enables the organization to go back and plan, replan, execute, review, basically put the PDCA cycle into play. Is that correct?
Yeah, which brings us back to lean again, right? So this whole lean concept of plan, do, check, act, or there's variations on top of that cycle, but in essence you have that loop on a higher level, on a quarterly level by default, but also in a small, when you're going to run experimentations towards your key results. Yeah.
Excellent. So this leads to the next question, which is mostly a confusion in the community, particularly those who don't know OKRs might think, the moment someone hear the term objectives, key results comes next. They almost conclude that this is just objectives also, right? Because they won't understand the key difference between the traditional goal setting methodologies or frameworks and objectives and key results. So can you help us to understand what are the key differences between objectives and key results and the traditional goal setting methodologies and frameworks?
Yeah, so the objective is a qualitative description of what you want to achieve. So there's no number, and the idea with an objective is to inspire people, right? To say like, oh, this is 90 days from now. This is where we want to be with our team or with our organization. So that provide focus, and then the key results. That's actually where the numbers come in. That's actually where you have the outcomes that will measure progress towards the objective, and will provide evidence basically that you have achieved the objective. So, and then the difficulty with that, of course, is that you need to be concrete enough in the objective that it makes sense. So that's not really fake and that nobody understands it. But it also needs, at the same time, it needs to be inspirational, and it is almost an art to get this right. So you need to inspire people, but at the same time not to be fake. So and this is where a lot of teams struggle. But I think it's really important, because when you compare it maybe to the traditional goal setting methodologies, for example, when you have SMART goals, SMART only focusing on the metrics. And I think it's really important to have also the objective added to that, because it will give a little bit more soul to the objectives or to your goal setting, right? Because not a lot of people have something with numbers, and having an objective, a written statement of what you want to describe gives a little bit more back the soul to goal setting. And in addition, there's even some people that try to create an image that represent the goal, right? So when you compare to traditional goal setting methodologies, you have the objective and you have the key results, whereas in other goal setting methodologies, you maybe only have the objective, or you have only the key results, or only the metrics with some targets on it. So, and I think OKRs combines the two, which I think is make it really makes it really simple to use and easy to use. And I think that is, if you compare it to other methods, I think OKRs and the popularity, because of popularity of OKRs, is due to the fact that it is simple, not simplistic, but simple to use.
I agree. And I think you kind of brought very, very clear perspective into that. So if I just put my understanding also there, but now I think the most simplistic example that I came across in terms of understanding what exactly objectives and key results, OKRs, and general objectives is this, right? So let's say I want to run 10-kilometer distance every day, every morning. Now, generally, what we do is we conclude at that, right? We say, I would say, tell myself, I need to run 10 kilometers every day, every morning before I start working. Now, this is good enough, right? I think people get trapped at that clarity and think that this is good enough for me to start running. Now, there the problem is I totally overlook the key results, right? How long? Now, example, right? One key result that I could define there is how long do I need to spend, right? Am I trying to complete the 10 kilometer in 45 minutes, or I am going to take 1 hour over 1 hour, right? That's a huge difference, right? If I look for continuous improvement as a runner, right, looking into my health, I of course need to maintain certain speed also. Otherwise, I might just walk, right, and finally call it I ran. So this is one. Another thing would be, how many breaks am I planning to get, right? I would say no breaks, with 0 breaks, right? Run 10 km every day with 0 breaks. This makes the difference, right? So I think that's what you clearly nailed. Objectives and key results will give you one additional layer where you need to define the expected outcome, and you chase that, you try to define that. But this is, even when I do this session, but right, so one thing that I do is I apply OK as an example, right? So what do I want to achieve here, right? Objective is to run the webinar. That's much more than that I have to achieve. What exactly I'm trying to get at, right? What are the things that I'm going to achieve is what I want to define through key results. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I would even argue that, running, in this personal example, running 10K every day is, by the way, is really hard. But what do we want to get out
yeah.
of that? Like, if you run the 10K every day, what will be the result of that? And I think if you're looking at the result, is that in the end, maybe after 90 days or maybe longer, what you want is, I want to win the,
Why?
I want to win the marathon in Sri Lanka, um, half a year from now. And so
Excellent.
so
Love
this
it.
so this so this would be then the objective, right? I want to win the marathon next quarter. And what are all the measures that you can put in place so it will increase the likelihood that this is going to happen, right? So then you can think about, okay, now we're going to exercise on a daily basis, and I look at what I eat. So I look at the amount of calories that I will intake, or will look at my heart rate and hydration and all these kind of levels.
Excellent. I love it. I love it, and I love this perspective. I think you brought up the similar perspective in one of the LinkedIn posts. Actually, that got my attention hooked into it, right? And then I researched about it, and that's a school of thought talking about now. Generally, even when in Andy Grove's definition, what is AC is objective is giving you a direction. Key results is what exactly you are going to output, right? Those are the outcomes, milestones that you're trying to achieve. I think the in the direction itself, it is meant that we need to talk about the why perspective, but we might overlook it, right? I think the perspective you brought up is really important. So what you're saying is question why. Is that correct? But in the
Yeah,
objective itself, ask why.
yeah, you can use why to come up with the right objectives. However, you need to be careful with that, because you can say, like, what you can continue to repeat the why question. However, then probably you end up, with with defining real peace, right? So,
Yeah.
or peace of mind, or so you need to be careful at which abstraction level you will sit, right, with teams. So, because you can say, like, well, we want to improve customer lifetime value. Why is that? Well, we want to help more customers. And why is that? Well, we want to have world peace, right? So it's really difficult. You need to define the right abstraction level, and that's why so many teams struggle with implementing OKRs, because you also don't want to you also don't want to define outputs and milestones, because you should always try to define outcomes. But sometimes these outcomes are too abstract to influence with a team or with a company, and then you need to go drill one level deep. And that's why it's so important to provide this organizational learning in organizations, because one quarter you maybe have an OKR that was too abstract. Now you go one level deeper, maybe too directional, too directive, and now the next quarter you nailed it and you're in between, and then when you get it and you put a lot of emphasis and focus on that, then probably magic will happen. But it's really difficult to find it and to define it. It's almost like an art to find what's the right abstraction level for your team to focus on. And what is also important is that it needs to tie back into your strategy. Like, what is it that you want to achieve? What are the things that you're not going to do in a coming quarter or in the next year, and then your strategy should inform your OKRs. That makes it also easier.
True, very true. But yeah, so I mean, thank you for the kind of critical look at it, because although it sounds really simple to say, hey, this is my direction, this is why I have to do it. What you're saying is it's not that easy, right? Because we try to define that at abstract level, where things might not be so clear, right? So I think in that report, that's exactly what they talk about, right? Either it can be too vague, or it could be too specific, right? So they talk about one research, but it's quite interesting, right? In one of the so they do this research. They basically pick group of people and ask them to watch a video. The video is basically a video where people play basketball, right? They basically pass the ball from one to another, right? They keep passing the ball. So there are two groups. guys wearing black t-shirt, guys wearing white t-shirt. So the goal given is watch the passes done by the guys wearing black t-shirt. So what happens is the group start focusing too specifically about that goal, they misses an obvious object coming into the ground, coming onto the ground, and then going back. So it was a black, guy wearing a black gorilla t-shirt, right?
Mhm.
Wearing a hat, black color hat, and the audience totally missed that because the goal given to them was watch passes done by the guys wearing the black t-shirt, right? They just
Yep.
focus on that, and because that makes sense, right? Based on the goal, because the goal was watch that, right? Everything else will be missed. So similarly, there can be a lot of problems around the goal setting and the goals that we are trying to chase. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it can be really powerful OKRs, and that's why you need to pay attention. But you need to try to focus not on outcomes. And also Google changes its model after 2011, while before Andy Grove and others, they said like it's fine to have like output focused goals, but actually we're interested in the outcomes. What are our users doing with the features that we build, for example? What are they doing with it? And if you then give a hard problem or an outcome basically to a team, or you collaborate with a team on defining an outcome, then magic will happen. So you should never focus on completing task, or focusing only on the people in the black t-shirts. Yeah, you can then you get maybe local optimization and stuff. Yeah,
that's correct. Yep. Let's move on. So quite a few questions to come up. The next thing that I quickly want to ask is about this one, right? So I'm displaying that on the screen. So we get a question. Okay, no. Wait. Yeah, so it's basically going here. Yeah, so it some weird setting, but let me check. Okay. The question that I have for you, the next one is, do we need to come up with a clear vision for the organizations? How do we craft a great vision? So this is primarily around the strategy, as you mentioned previously. Do you have any recommendation how we should tackle crafting an organizational vision?
So that's a good question. I think it really helps a company to have defined a strategy on paper and to communicate it with everybody in the organization. And I think it starts all with a mission. Like, what's the reason why the company exists in the first place, and then and that's probably a goal that you never will achieve in your lifetime, right? So, but a vision I think it's a statement where you want to be maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and it makes a lot of sense to put a metric on that vision. Like, sometimes they call it a big, hairy, audacious goal. But the problem with that goal, I think, is that it's not measurable, right? Or sometimes not measurable. So what other organizations try to do sometimes is to put what is called an ultimate OKR as your vision, as your vision statement almost. And that really helps. Okay, this is the dot on the horizon. That's the direction that we want to go for the next 5 to 10 years. And if you have defined that, maybe you need to put more words to that, and maybe put something on paper, not like a 10-20 page vision document, but maybe just a 1-page document, or maybe even a canvas or a lean canvas, right? So it can help there to define your vision. But then you need to come up with a plan. Like, how are you going to get a little bit closer to that longer term vision? And that is what is called often a strategy, right? So how do we go a little bit closer to that? And then strategy is, these are the things that we're not going to do. We are very focused on the thing that we will do. And of course, there are many strategies possible in a company. You can have the corporate strategy itself, like the overall company direction. But when you're talking about OKRs, especially in software development teams, in agile teams, you're talking about executing on a product strategy, which is a subset of that longer term vision. Like, this is the vision that we have with the product, how we're going to get closer to that longer term vision with the product organization, and then try to set a couple of OKRs that are informed by your strategy. So saying you want to increase customer lifetime, that could be a longer term goal, right? But what does it mean for us? What does it mean for next quarter? So you could say, well, this quarter we are going to focus on increasing customer lifetime value only for the European market or for the Asian market. And you can even be more specific than that. We're only going to focus on the customer lifetime value of small customers or SME customers in, I don't know, the Sri Lanka area. And then you're really laser focused. And that's what we're trying to do with OKRs. We really try to focus with them and give a hard challenge to the teams to solve. So this is how everything ties together, from mission to vision to strategy to your OKRs.
Yep. So I'm with you. Yeah. So based on what I have researched, as well as what I have adapted in OKR applications, what I found is that it's kind of one of the critical aspects to focus, right? And focus to very few set of goals than many, because we tend to say yes and yes and yes, keep saying yes to many things that are aspirational, because we love to achieve more, right? But the problem with that is, you might not have enough sufficient focus. So I think what you brought up there is really, really key. If you lose the focus, you lose everything else, because see, if you have the wrong set of goals set, right, everything else that you do for that given quarter would be based on that, right? That's why this is critical. That's why we need to pay much more attention than usual to ensure that we set the right goals. And I think we will come to that point. That's where we suggest the OKR cycle. It's not one-off thing, right? You should be coming back, right? You should also adjust if the situation becomes a situation where you have to adjust your OKR set, right? Because otherwise you're just keeping your OKRs, which are not relevant. You're doing something else, and this happens. This is very challenging to stick to few priorities in a given time horizon.
Yeah.
So
great, I want to go one level deeper, and saying that one of the lean concepts that are trying to apply to OKRs is the concept of inventory is waste, right? So in lean, we consider inventory waste. And when you're looking at OKRs, then I see a lot of organizations that have like tens of goals in their organization, even on executive level, and say like, oh, these are all the things that we need to do. Well, that's OKRs is really about focus. So if you can reduce that inventory of goals, inventory of OKRs to just one, that will create extreme focus, and that will help you with the 2x or 10x growth of your companies, right? So you should really focus. The focus is so hard, but so important. If you can't focus, then probably they're not going to work.
Excellent. Just a side question, Bart. Are you a big fan of value stream mapping, or do you suggest any lean tools to be used in this effort in combination with OKR?
Yeah, so value stream mapping is a great exercise to see how your processes are working. You can use them on a macro level, but also on a micro level. And I think they're great to understanding bottlenecks, but they're also great to discover metrics for inside your key results. So sometimes I use value stream mapping to discover some leading or lagging metrics that you can use inside your key results. Yeah, so it's a great technique that sometimes can be used, and it's and you can pretty much use it in almost everywhere you see processes. For example, when you look at the sales process, they sometimes call it the funnel, right? But it is also a process, so you need to identify your customers, and then it goes through a funnel. It's a process, so you can apply value stream mapping technique on that. Same with marketing and other processes. But ideally, of course, you look holistically at the whole company and try to map the whole complete value stream in there. But it's a great technique to find good key results.
Thank you. Yeah. So I just wanted to see your stance. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of value stream mapping. In fact, I have done 2 interviews with one of the value stream lean consultants who has written one of the very trending books called Value Stream Mapping, Karen Marty. I recently interviewed her for the concept of clarity first, right? So again, what we say here is the same, almost the same thing, right? Be clear, create clarity before you jump in, right? So that's important. And I think, the fact that you brought this concept called eliminating the waste is coming at the top of everything we do, right? Because that's exactly the biggest problem is also, right? If you look at even a startup, right? Multiple departments are pulling into multiple directions, right? Because they don't collaborate. So I call it touch points, right? We haven't optimized the touch points. We always focus on suboptimal improvements. Example, HR is good at what they are doing, and what they try to do is optimize the HR processes, right? Now they don't worry about what's happening outside, and if you don't, so they are missing the total value stream, right? They might optimize within HR, but they are not optimizing as a company, right? Because there will be a lot of waste in that transition as well. Yeah.
And that's why I love OKRs, because OKRs they go across departmental borders, and because in essence they're abstract constructs anyway, right? If you have a department and then you have maybe sub-department, or sometimes companies use the Spotify model. They have like a tribe and then or product areas, and these are all kind of abstract things anyway. And with OKRs, you set OKRs across all these boundaries. So what you're trying to do is like, okay, look at all the talent that we have, and see if you can somehow self-organize around this goal, and then create a team or a product team around that will move the company forward. And sometimes it means like, we need to include marketing, we need to include sales, and or maybe other people from these functions. So yeah, that's a good topic, and then you try to optimize around the value stream. Yeah,
absolutely. Great perspective. Right now, the next question. It's pretty much going to be a challenging one, but let me put that. So the question is, now in your observation, right, what are the top 3 traps that you have seen in goal setting?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are a lot of traps, especially when it comes down to OKRs, right? So I think not necessary to goal setting, but I think necessary to OKRs is that it's cultural. It is this command and control organizational model that is implemented, and then you try to implement OKRs on top of it, and what you see is symptoms like tying compensation to the OKRs and bonuses to OKRs, or we try to micromanage teams with OKRs, or worse, we're going to buy OKR software tools so that we can control and to see where all the teams are working on, and of course that's the wrong incentives, right? This is not why you want to use OKRs in the first place, and it's not a healthy environment to start using them. So that I can unpack that if you want, but that's by far I think the most the biggest trap of all. Like we try to implement OKRs on an organizational culture that is not ready for it, and so one of the other traps will be, I think, that there's no baseline data at all in an organization. So That's different when you have like a B2C company where there's a lot of metrics, Google Analytics, all this information is widely available. But when it comes down to business organizations, it surprised me how many of these organizations are not collecting enough data points to base their OKRs on. And so that's another thing. I think most B2B companies should really invest in defining good KPIs or good metrics. And that's always, when I'm joining a company, there was always KPIs, but most of them are the wrong KPIs. So they should first do investigation and do discovery work about what are some good metrics or KPIs that we can track before they even start on the OKR journey. And then I think another trap will be not implementing the OKR cycle that we talked about, right? So they set the OKR, they set and forget it, and team set an OKR, and at the end of the quarter they find out that nothing moved, and well, the whole tool become useless basically, right? So it's not giving them any benefits, so only for ticking a box. So that is another trap that I've seen a lot. There are many more traps, but I think these are quite common in many organizations.
I agree. Yeah. So just I think I totally agree, and just to complement, one of the particularly this is not true for your culture, but particularly APAC, Asian culture, right? So there is a lot of bureaucracy, there is a lot of political nature in the organizations, and I mean, when it's worst, nothing works.
Yeah.
So when the organization is politically driven, no management methodology will work. So that's my observation, right? So don't claim that you're trying to transform yourself if you're not ready to fix your basics. Yeah,
exactly.
So one of the big problems is that it's basically the culture. You're right. You won't believe, but I have one of my coaches who left a big company, joined another big company, and he got a step progression, and he never realized what was he going into, right? And he thought it's better off, of course, in terms of the package, the step progression, but the culture is not helping him, right?
No.
He's not even been able to do what he was doing as a project manager, as a senior project manager here, right? It's just a title. And when he tries to go and talk to the management, his line manager, line manager says, don't talk about it, right? So we just do what you are supposed to, what you're being asked to do. In a culture like that, nothing works. Yeah. So as managers, leaders, I think we have a bigger responsibility to fix the basics, fix the foundational problems before we think of any of these things, right? These things will help if you have your basics fixed.
Exactly, yeah. And I think it's not only EPAC, I think it's also in Europe. We see the same problems. People hiding behind bureaucracy and roles, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as the organization is still, moving forward.
Can move.
And
Absolutely.
and it works for them. That's fine, but they probably don't need OKRs, right? They probably are better off just defining a good set of KPIs or metrics, and then they move on. So there's nothing wrong with that. However, if the organization really want to, be more innovative and make sure that they make big step changes, then they should think maybe about embracing a tool such as OKRs. And there's an interesting idea that many organizations use, is that they understand, the leaders, they realize that without the current organizational culture, it's not going to work. So they understand that, they agree on that. But what you see often is that they starting to use OKRs to create this organizational change, to create this culture change. Because implementing OKRs is a big challenge. I don't need to lie to you. So it's really difficult to get it right. But once you have the foundations in place, you have the OKR cycle in place, and you have basically the operating system for change in your organization, then you can maybe start thinking about, okay, maybe we should first do internal changes. And many organizations, especially larger ones, they will focus on increasing operational excellence first for a couple of quarters before they move on to the more commercial and customer specific OKRs. So OKRs can also help to get out of this bureaucracy and move on to maybe even a product-led company or something like that. And so OKRs can also create internal change, and I think it's interesting for many leaders to think about that idea. Okay, once we have installed OKRs or we have installed the cycles and the rhythms, we can use OKRs to as a lever strategically to change the way how we currently operate and to change culture from the inside. And I think that is very interesting to play around with that concept.
Great, thank you, Bart. So let's see if anyone from the audience has any questions. Please drop them in the comments. We will pick them during the discussion. Quite a few more questions lined up. I'm eager to go through them, but at the same time, if you do have any questions, if you want to interact with us, just put down your questions in the chat. Moving on, but the next question that I want to ask you is about the OKR anatomy. So if someone wants to write an effective OKR, what should be the structure to be followed?
Yeah, there's no such a thing as the perfect OKR, of course. So I always say, perfect is the enemy of good. So especially when you're going to start with OKRs, I think it's more important to just start with them and to practice, and later on you will make them more perfect. I think when it comes down to objectives, I think it's really important to say the thing that you want to achieve. So by looking, for example, at existing KPIs. So if you look at customer satisfaction and you want to give that a big boost with your team, then saying like, okay, next quarter, our customers love our product, right? So that is tightly connected with this KPI that you're already measuring. And then for the key results, there's a special formula that you can use to be really specific. And this formula is for beginners, so it's just a template. So you always want to increase or decrease something. And so you want to increase or decrease, and then a statistic like the average or the total or amount or P99 percentile or something like that. So you always have a statistic. So you want to increase, then the statistic, then the actual thing that you want to measure. Is that apples, pears, like subscriptions? What is the thing call the thing that you want to measure? And then is really important from X to Y, and the X means the baseline. What is your current situation? What's your current situation? And then the Y is your target. And for those that are familiar with Lean and Lean Kata, you probably recognize this way of thinking. But so you should really have the baseline in place so that all the teams or that you as a company understand, like, here are we now, and then 90 days from now we want to achieve this target. So that's the Y. So again, so you want to increase or decrease something. Then the statistic, the total or the number, then the metrics itself, and then from X to Y. And I think if you use that construct, if you use that formula, then most of your key results will be okay. And again, they should be focused on the outcomes and not on the output that you want. So never count the amount of features, for example, or something like that. That will be a waste. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So I think you nailed it again. So to kind of continue with the same topic on the same direction, but talking about how to write OKRs. Can you just tell me the top two tips that you can provide in terms of writing the OKRs effectively?
Yeah, I think one thing is to understand really the result that you want to achieve, the outcome you want to achieve, and
Yeah.
and you can think of it as a change in human behavior, either externally or internally. Like it's great that you develop a feature for somebody, but what would you like somebody to do with that feature that you have developed? And I think that's really important. And that's of course for customers. What's that feature going to do for your customers? And it also implies internally, right? So you'll maybe have an internal team, maybe a platform team. You also have an internal customer, so you could also think about what are we going to change in behavior in that internal customer, right? So and for example, I send out an email campaign. That's not a key result, right? But if you say like, well, we're going to send out an email campaign and we count the number of clicks, that's maybe also not relevant, but we count the number of open emails and the number of clicks that people do, right? That's a change in behavior. They need to open up the email, they need to click on the link, and that's something that we can start measuring. So thinking about that is one. And the other one would be everybody likes a challenge, right? You see a lot of, on social media, you see like ice bucket challenge. There's a lot of challenges, like people love a challenge. And I think framing the objective as the challenge you would like to do or to solve with the team for the next 90 days or the next quarter really put things in perspective. So I think if you can maybe I'll also do a thought experiment with people, like maybe you can close your eyes and think about you step into a time machine, and 90 days from now you step out, then you look around and what do you observe? What is different, right? And can you maybe describe that? And that will probably be your OKR. So I think that is that is a trick that I do a lot of with teams, and that really helps. So and but again, it requires practice. Nice. It's not easy, right? So I explained it easy. It requires a lot of patience and practice. So certification, I have my opinion about certification, but I think it helps with having a good foundation. But then you need to put in the hours to practice over again until you get it right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So great stuff. Let me move on to the next question. Now, this is one of the very important questions that we already spoke about, the OKR cycle. Now, moving towards the topic OKR cycle, what specific cadences do you recommend in the total OKR cycle?
Yeah, so the total cycle by default is 90 days. And I always start with that because if you think about it, makes sense, right? If you want to focus on outcomes, if you want to change behavior, if you want to change anything radical, 90 days is already really limited time to do a really big step change, right? So if you think you can do it shorter, then probably it's not a big change, or will not have any significance, any significant results. So 90 days for me is the minimum, I would say. To start with, and so maybe you need to adjust it to your company. Some companies, they use it quarterly. Some of them use it every trimester. Or even half a year. I think that would be good. And then it starts always with this. We're going to plan and set the OKRs. Then we're going to align them between teams. If you have more than one team in your organization, you're going to align between teams. Then you're going to into the cycle of having a weekly cadence of OKR check-ins. And then at the end, you do a retrospective to see how you can improve on the process, or where you learn, and where you're going to set new OKRs. And especially the weekly check-ins, to have this rhythm, having the cadence is key to the success of OKRs. So if you don't have weekly OKR check-ins, it's probably not going to work for your organization. You really need to check in on a regular basis with the whole team to understand, like, what kind of things can we now discover? What things can we now deliver, try, error, do experiments to see how you can move the needle.
Right. So now I also agree, right? So even in the framework that I mentioned to you, EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is based out of the book called Traction, uh, seems to be really working. This is what we typically adopted in our organization, my current company. It works as you rightly mentioned, but that framework, that methodology also recommend that you should start focusing on your next 90 days, right? And personally, right, so I had done this experiment personally as well. Whenever I want to achieve anything significant which contributes towards my value proposition, my revenue, wealth, right, my competency, I think 3 months is a good time horizon. It's long enough for you to achieve something, short enough for you to focus. I think
Exactly.
that's why it
Yeah.
is working,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Exactly.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think
From there,
if you,
sorry.
sorry,
Go
if
ahead.
you ever tried to quit smoking, for example, you know it's really hard and difficult to
Mhm.
do, right? Or if you want to go to the gym more
Yeah.
often, it's it's already really difficult to do that yourself. Um, it's
Hmm.
even harder when you want to do that with a whole team or whole customer segment, right? So yeah, that's why at least you need 90
Correct.
days. Yeah.
Correct. So from there, but what you recommended was you're going to have a weekly check-in. Can you just brief what exactly you would do in a weekly check-in?
Yeah. So in the weekly
How
check-in,
do
you
you
look.
do the check-in?
Yeah, the check-in is a
Yeah.
short meeting, just short meeting, Monday morning, 8 o'clock. Um,
Hmm.
preferably, right? So you do it at the beginning of the week before you have
Okay.
all your other things, before the week starts, right? And then
Hmm.
you're looking at your OKRs, you're looking at your key results, and you might want to give it a
Hmm.
confidence score, like, oh, how comfortable are we that we, moving the
Hmm.
needle this week or the coming weeks.
Hmm.
And then you're going to look at maybe some of your obstacles, like what's preventing us from moving the needle this week. And then you can come up with some kind
Hmm.
of experiments, like how you can remove these obstacles that you face. And sometimes the obstacles are really hard,
Right.
sometimes the obstacles are really uh, obvious, maybe. Yeah, so it really depends on how you look at that. um, yeah, so and that's something. And then you also want to pay attention to your health metrics. You also, while you're going for this really hard goal, right? So if you want to run a marathon,
Yep.
to use that
Yep.
metaphor again, um, you also need to pay attention to your heart rate and to your hydration while you're going for this bigger goal, right? So it's really
Hmm.
important as a team also to understand and to keep monitoring your business as usual. um, and then you basically you have a couple of experiments or things you want to try out that week, and then and you repeat that every week. You're going to repeat it. What's the OKR? What are the key results? What's your confidence level? What's blocking us? What are the obstacles? And how what kind of experiments can we run this week to
Hmm.
either explore more about the problem or to move the needle of the key results.
Excellent. Love it. Yeah. So it's basically again going back to agile mindset and the approach where we want to kind of review the things quite often, right? That's basically the feedback loop being
Yeah.
enabled. Is that
You want to
correct?
have
Yeah.
you want to have feedback as soon as possible, right? You can't afford to wait until it always
3 months.
frustrates me. Yeah, exactly. It always frustrates me that teams working on maybe a feature and then working on it, and maybe after 1 quarter or even half a year, going dark, they will
Yeah.
launch a feature, and guess what? It doesn't
Yeah.
work, right? So
It
yeah,
doesn't
that's
work.
that's
Yeah.
that's a waste. And again, coming back to lean, we want to avoid waste, and one of this waste is building features that nobody wants.
Excellent. Yeah. So from there, I have few more questions as well. I think these are really connected to what we are discussing. Now, the next thing is, if you look at, let me get this. If you look at the review, right? Now, one of the problems that we have in the traditional goal setting frameworks I think it's not a problem with the framework itself. It's the problem with the cadences, because most of these frameworks don't recommend any clear cycle, right? Example, smart goals. I have
Yep.
been in big organizations where smart goals were used. I mean, nothing wrong. When you look at it, you get some
No.
level of clarity, right? But the problem
Yep.
there was we never review. Yeah, we never review. We never go back and ask the question: Are we really focusing on the goals, objectives, right? We don't do that. So my question is around that, Bart. How to review OKRs effectively? Any best practices or any practices that you recommend?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I think it's a great example. I think if you compare OKRs to the other goal setting methodologies, I think the difference is the cadence, right? Is the cycle that you have and the weekly rhythms towards these goals. I argue that with smart goals you can achieve the same thing, by the way, but they're outdated outdated anyway. But to review OKRs is I think you I think yeah I think you should review OKRs on a weekly basis, and you can use confidence scores to get because OKRs is really about hard data and getting this hard data, but you also need to give some more soul or have some qualitative data as well to OKR. So what's your confidence? What's your feeling saying about the goal? You can have it hard on paper.
Progress.
What's your feeling saying? What's the team feeling about your gut feel that if it's achievable or not? So you want to couch this on a continuous basis. So then, of course, on a continuous basis, every week you're going to do this. So you get already regular feedback. You're regularly reviewing the progress on your OKRs, and then at the end of the cycle, there are some teams, by the way, that do this mid-quarter or mid-cycle as well, to do a regular agile retrospective, right? To do a review, the looking back at the OKRs, and the looking back like, okay, what are the things that we can learn from this? Some of the OKRs we didn't move the needle. Why is that? Right? Having a healthy conversation about that topic, or maybe we achieved the key results, but it was too easy, right? And maybe you want to have a conversation about that as well with the team. Like, why was it too easy? Because what we try with OKRs is that we try to set a stretch goal, right? Something that is not easy to achieve. So we don't expect teams to achieve 100% of their OKR. And then you also want to reflect back on the process itself, because you're going to install this default cycle, but maybe that cycle doesn't fit in your organization, or maybe you need to change some of the events, or maybe you need to reduce the amount of events that you have. So you constantly, as a team, as a company, need to reflect back at how can we both improve OKRs themselves, and how can we improve the process so that it fits in our culture, in our way of working. And because sometimes you can decide, 90 days doesn't work for us. Maybe you need to go to 120 days for us to be more effective. And that's something that you need to critically reflect every week. So you run a retrospective at the end. So you do both. So weekly check-ins, weekly reviews to monitor progress, and at the end you have the retrospective.
At the end of the 90 days?
At the end of the 90 days, yeah. And some teams use say like, we can't wait that long, and they also do it mid-quarter. So after 45 days, they do also a retrospective. So but that depends on the team. Yeah.
Sounds great. Yeah. So I think what you explain is what exactly we follow at this point also, right? We do a planning every quarter, the first week, right, in the first few days, and then we put down our team level OKRs, and then move on. At the end of the quarter 90 days, we do the retrospection and the planning for the upcoming quarter.
Yeah.
Right. Which works, and the weekly review. So anyone interested what EOS talks about? EOS also has a weekly meeting about management review, where we actually review the rocks, which are equivalent of OKRs, weekly basis, right? So the leadership team, the team leads basically get together in that meeting and then go through the review. So that allows us to be aligned with what we want to do, any adjustments, all that can happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of management books they say the same thing, right? What you need is to have a regular rhythm installed with your teams, with the leadership teams, and have it on a regular basis. I think that is one of the key things, to regularly align with each other, to see how things are going.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of having weekly meetings. The moment I think when people say, "Well, why not? Why should we? Should we not do bi-weekly meetings?" Then alarm bells should ring. Like, oh,
It yes,
you're trying
yes,
to
yeah.
hide, right? So you hide something, yeah. Or there's
Correct.
nothing to align about, or yeah. I think it's really key to have these weekly meetings.
Absolutely.
Only if
those
it's like 10 minutes. Yeah.
correct. Those who are really resisting probably have certain things to hide. That's my observation as well.
Yeah, probably.
Right. Okay. So two more questions, Bart. Is that a quick time check, Bart? We have already exceeded the agreed time. Is that okay? Another 10 minutes, maybe?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah,
To wrap up?
yeah. I
Yeah.
can do more. Yeah.
Thank you. Right. So the next question, which is one before the last, is this is about one of the problems most of the organizations go through. We talk about goal cascading, right? But the problem that I have seen in cascading is it takes a lot of time. So I have
Yeah.
spent the first quarter defining the goals. Now think of the cascading part, right? In this organization I worked, like, many years ago, several years ago, we pretty much, it comes from the chairman to the board of directors to the the site heads in multiple countries, then site heads to the VPs of different functions, then VPs to AVPs to managers, etc. Right? So it takes 3 months just to define the goals for those teams, and from there we start cascading, and we talk about annual performance, and by the time individuals hear about that, it's already gone, like in half the year is gone.
Yeah.
Right now my question is around that. Now my stance is that probably we need to change that approach. What is your recommendation in terms of getting that time shorter, so that you have the OKRs ready, right,
Yeah.
as soon as possible for the teams to go and chase them?
So it really depends, of course, on your company size. But let's say that you have a company size of maybe between 200, 500 people, or even 2,000 people. You need to do this in less than 1 week. You need to do everything. You need to have goals on company level, and you need to have goals on team level. So if you cannot do that in 1 week, I think you need to critically look at why that is not happening. And it's only 1 quarter. So every quarter, you what I call OKR week. There's every quarter, the whole organizations need to spend on OKR week. And there's some organizations that can do that in 1-2 days. It's amazing if you can structure it, and if you build out the habit and you have the skill set to do proper OKR setting, it doesn't need to take that long. So I think even if you can do it in 1 day or 2 days, that will be amazing if you can do that, instead of spending weeks and weeks about sandbagging and we need to do an OKR. Setting OKR should be intense but a lot of fun, and you will have critical discussions for sure. But it needs to be, fast. And I mentioned cascading OKRs in my book as well. But then I quickly correct myself, like, it's not about cascading. It's not, doing it from the top down to all the trenches in your organization. So OKRs is a top down and bottom up approach, which means that it's good for leadership to give a strategic direction. Like, this is the direction that we want, the strategic context or the strategic intent that we sometimes call them. But then it's really the role of the leadership teams to sit together with the teams to give them guidance and direction on where we want to be with the team, and that the teams will come up with ways on how to measure it, They need to challenge themselves on their ambition level, and together it should be a collaborative process with the leader and the team together to come up with a good OKR for the next quarter. And sometimes if you're really mature and true product teams, they can set it them for themselves, because maybe they already understand like the bigger picture. And sometimes even some of the key results or some of the OKRs from the teams is so important to the organization, because maybe a team discovered something like, oh, if we really focus the organization on this thing, then it can provide a big 10x boost to the rest of the organization. Then even sometimes the OKR that's created on a team level can be elevated to a company level OKR. And I think that could be really powerful. Or that is really powerful if you can do this. And so it's not a top-down approach. It's not cascading, so it's top-down, bottom-up approach, and sideways. So I always like to put the company level OKR even in the middle, and then all the teams around, what I call OKR swarming. They swarm around the company level OKR and they try to influence it as much as possible. And this goes beyond, the organizational structure that we have in place, beyond departments and business units, and forget about these things. OKRs is about lean OKRs in particular is about forgetting all these boundaries and only focusing on the problem that we want to solve.
Super. Yeah. Thank you very much for those great insights, Bart. Yeah, so I think we got to wrap up the discussion. I don't want to take any further time, but I have my final question for you.
Yep.
So the question is just looking at the whole OKR, the term OKR, adoption perspective, anything, right? What's your single message? If anyone interested listen to you, what is that message that you can give as the single message about OKRs?
Keep it lightweight and simple. Don't trap into this fall of making it so complex that it will become the next management fad, right? That will be my number one thing, and that's why I call my book Lean OKRs. Moving the needle with Lean OKRs, you need to have a lightweight process, lightweight goal setting methodology that actually brings business results without implementing OKRs for the sake of implementing OKRs or to tick a box so you can move on. Unfortunately, I see a lot of teams that see OKRs as there's something that we need to do. It's the same as time management, keeping filling in your timesheets. OKR should be really fun to work on. So that would be my main message. Keep them simple. Keep them simple, stupid. KISS principle.
Excellent. Yeah, so love it. But yeah, so with that, let's wrap up the discussion. Yeah, so as we discussed, the topic for the day was objectives and key results, which is quite trending management methodology used by a lot of corporates, scale-ups and startups. And probably, if you are not still using OKRs, probably this is the right time. It has a lot of benefits. That's something that I have noticed. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Bart from Netherlands. And if you do have any questions, or if you are in APAC, reach out to me. So I kind of started experimenting this thing 1.5 years ago. And I got to know it 3 years ago. And then, I see major benefits around it personally as well as professionally, right? If you are a manager, if you are a change agent, if you are a leader who is trying to transform the way your people, your organization, well, probably this is a good start, because all what it demands is clarity. All what it try to provide you is also clarity. Yeah. And through that clarity, we are trying to create alignment. We are trying to be focused on what really matters to us, right? Then it's all about being accountable, being aligning, and then going for it, right? So let's try that. Good luck. And Bart, thank you very much for your time. It's really, really appreciative, the time you spent with us talking about your great insights, hard-earned insights, I would say, right? Definitely tacit knowledge that you won't see anywhere else. Yeah. Thank you for generosity. Thank you for your time here. And yeah, with that, let's call it a day.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And if I can
It's
plug my
it's
book, it's you go to Lean OKRs. Oh, sorry, you go
Yeah.
to Moving the Needle / book, and then you can if you subscribe, then you can also get a discount code when the book is out.
super. Yeah. So we will put the link on the live feed, right? So when if you're someone who is going through offline, after the live show, you will still see that comment in the comments. We will put that in the comment segment. Watch for that. It will be on LinkedIn as well as on Facebook. If you want to learn more about Lean OKRs, get that book in your hand. I'm sure it's going to give you a bit of wisdom for you to drive your next change transformation, your next initiative in your organization. Yeah. With that hope, let's call it a day. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you soon. Until we see you again, take care. Stay safe. Thank you, Bart.
Bye. See you.
Cheers. Bye.